I don't know about you, but when it comes to computer cases, size does matter.
That's what she said.
ATX cases, micro ATX cases, and then we have ITX cases. Today we have the Fractal Design Era with us. The case boxing isn't overdone. Once we cut the single tape holding it together, we are greeted with that part that will raise eyebrows. Although people like me end up throwing boxes anyway, the amount of work Fractal Design has put into this box is truly commendable. Just look at this. The Fractal Design logo is printed all around the inside of the box. A cool box to keep lying around probably? Fractal Design is a renowned company, right? It does not matter whether they have just 80 employees, but we have seen very quality stuff come from them over the past few years. And when a case is so ambitiously named as the Era, how can it be bad? The box contained a dedicated accessories box. I mean, accessory boxes are not one of a kind, but this looks like it packs some interesting stuff inside of it. We get a user guide, a wooden panel, and a mesh panel. These look promising, and we get another small box inside it. Guess it is a box inside a box game now. That box had a few zip ties and a few screws inside of it. But kudos on creating such a great unboxing experience. I'm giving this a 7 of 10. For now, let's admire the looks of this case. There are quite a few color options available. The one that I have for review now is called the silver. Now you saw the wooden panel earlier, right? Not all of the Eras have wood integration. The carbon, cobalt and blue have glass integrations at the top, so you will have to either pick the silver or the titanium versions to get the wood. Also, the titanium grey variant has a darker wooden panel, specifically called the walnut. Now this is a shiny case with racy curves all around it. It looks even better in person than on camera, so let's put this together. This case isn't an attention grabber, and this wood integration just makes it a tad better. You don't see wood integration in computer cases very often these days, and there are good reasons for that. Well, the thing is that the people who set these rules aren't dumb, and this case does face the ill effects of violating a set rule. Am I making any sense? I will. Now this is a 16-liter case. Now that is quite big as compared to other ITX offerings in the market. This case is a couple USB 3.0 ports and also an USB Type-C port in the front. You also get a hybrid microphone cum audio out jack as well as the power button. That's it for this minimalist front I/O. You don't get a load of things and this looks very clean. I'm up for it. Moving to the sides of the case, it has very little ventilation. Yeah, all of these vents are purely for the looks, and this case does not care about airflow. We see a bit more ventilation in the bottom, but you need a negative pressure build to fully utilize this. The back of the case also follows the same minimalist design. Also, the Fractal Design logo has been reintegrated here, and that looks cool. They also have a power cable socket built in and integrated. So let's open up the case and see why they had to do that. Okay, so taking the case off will not require you a single tool. The side panels are held with a friction tab, and the top panel is held magnetically, and they come off with a snap. Now there are a lot of things to go over in the inside of the case, so let me go one by one. The first obvious thing is this huge panel in the front. This is a hard drive caddy. Well, it is quite big for a hard drive caddy. The main thing I can see this doing is obstructing airflow. The second thing is this rat's nest of wires. So it's all your power cables, the front I/O connectors and stuff like that. And the third thing is a hybrid PSU cum hard drive cage. It is completely modular, so you can either mount a hard drive and a small form factor PSU or a full-size ATX PSU. Now we don't get to see full-size ATX PSU support in ITX cases every day. So this is pretty special for this case, and I very much admire this. Fractal even gives you the chance to alter the position of this cage to mount up to a 240mm radiator. Now 240mm rad support in an ATX case, that is a lot. Fractal, hats off. You can mount up to 4 120mm fans in this case, 2 in the top and 2 in the bottom. Now for the bottom fans, you will have to find slim models because the regular 25mm fans are not going to fit in here. Also, I doubt how much airflow the bottom fans are going to bring in because it is already obstructed. Now slim fans cost more than the thicker counterparts, so be ready to cash in a bit more. Also, we have an included 80cm fan from a bygone era in the rear of the case, so that is going to help with airflow a bit. The mesh panel that we found while unboxing can be replaced with the wood panel here in the top, so that is also going to help with a bit more airflow. But you're sacrificing looks for that because wood really looks very minimalist. Fractal also gives dust filters for every vent in this case, so that is a good move. It will prevent this case from accumulating a lot of dust. 8 of 10 for the looks and hardware support. This is a case you would want to keep in your living room. Now building in this case was a challenge. That is the thing with every ITX case out there. You need to have some creative ideas to fit everything into this small volume. For the Psu support, as I mentioned earlier, Fractal Design gives you to choose between small form factor PSUs and ATX PSUs. Small form factor PSUs cost a lot, so the results are quite convincing. You can easily fit an ATX PSU in the case, although that will require a bit of finger gymnastics. You can easily do this. Now if you're going for an ATX PSU, you will not get the chance to use this hard drive gauge, so that is a bummer. For graphics card support, Fractal says that you can fit up to 295mm cards in this build, but anything above 200mm will give you a hard time. We use the GTX 1660 Ventus XS OC in this build. Now that card is around 204mm and that required some very clever cable management, to be honest. Now any of these new 20 series or 30 series cards or even the RX 6000 series from AMD come with multiple power input ports, so cable managing them can get very tricky and you might end up having a build whose side panel cannot be put on. For cooling, this case supports up to 120mm air coolers, but better stick to water cooling because this case does not have a ton of airflow. For the number of radiators, you can fit up to a maximum of 240mm rad on the top, or you can also go for two 120mm rads, say one for the CPU and one for the GPU. We used a full-blown 240mm rad from Thermaltake, specifically the Thermaltake TH240. With a lot of time trying to manage the cables, we finally realized that we cannot do a lot about it. So the end result isn't quite aesthetic, but it gets the job done pretty well. Building in this case was a bit tricky, but I do not have any complaints about it because this is an ITX build. Also, Fractal gives you a lot of hardware choice, so I'm giving this a solid 7 out of 10. Okay, so now let's move to the thermal testing. Let's see if this case is really any good. Spoiler alert, things are going to get pretty bad. So let's go from the best metrics to the worst. Also, before I start, here is a look at our test bench. We are using the Core i5 processor coupled with a GTX 1660, and also all of the fans were set to exhaust to build a negative pressure inside of the build so that air can come from all of the vents of this case. While using the bundled mesh top panel and leaving the side panel off and the fans at 50%, the CPU temperature was at 61.5 degrees. Although the 10400 isn't a very hot running chip, but 60 degrees is fine. I'll take it. Dialing the fans up to 100% increased the performance a bit. The CPU measured 57 degrees. That is quite good for a 10400, especially because the load was IDA 64. Now GPU temperatures are a different story. When we left the fans at 50%, the GPU temperatures were at 70 degrees. Closing the side panel, however, brought the temperature down by almost a degree. Surprising, right? Pushing the fans to 100% and keeping the side panel off, the temperatures were in the upper 71s. I will take that. Still acceptable. Now putting the side panel on does not increase the GPU temperature much because it already did not have enough air since it was almost stuck in the bottom. But this trend is opposite to what we found in the first test. So I guess the GTX 1660 just decided to run a little bit colder for some reason. Now let's put the wood panel on. Things will get real worse now. While the fans were at 50%, the side panel was off. The CPU temperature was around 72 degrees. Putting the side panel on pushed the temperature to 81 degrees. Fair word of caution, this is a Core i5 10400. Can you imagine what will happen if we are on chips like the 5600X or the 11600K? The GPU temperatures did not take much of a hit because the worst has already been done with it. In the upper 70s in both the cases. I see what you're doing, Fractal. Pushing the fans to 100% and keeping the side panel off, the temperatures are okay-ish. I mean, you can get along with it, but putting the side panel on still gives a nightmare. Okay, so what do you infer from all of these? Temperatures are trash in this system. Now ITX cases are cramped builds, airflow is a bit tight, but this is way worse from the competition. 4 out of 10. This brings me to value. Now this case sells for around 16,000 INR or around $160 US. And after looking at all of the performance metrics, man, I'm not into spending that much behind an ITX case. My big Arts XPG battlecruiser packs 1,000 more specs and comes with a much better price to performance ratio, and all of that at a price lesser than this one. Now I am not comparing an ATX case to an ITX case, but this case does not deserve to be that costly. So one sentence for Fractal's Era. Good looking overpriced ITX case that you should not buy. Now the definition of this varies. If you are a gamer or a content creator, stay away from this case. you will have no other way but to use a dedicated graphics card, and this case will give you a nightmare. There are a lot of other ITX options like the N-Case M1, look at them. But if you are looking to build a media PC that you will keep around in your stylish living room, go for this case. Now I am assuming a media PC will be an APU build, so you will have no graphics card in it. The only reason I am suggesting this case is because it looks amazing and it will lighten up your minimalist living room for sure. You can go ahead and pair a maximum of a 5600G with the system, because anything like a 5700G or better are hot running chips and that might be an issue. I mean, you do not want your computer to sound like a turbocharged supercar when you put some load on it, right? Also, this rear fan can be placed either as intake or exhaust. Placing it as intake helps the GPU temperatures by a degree, and placing it as exhaust helps with the CPU temperatures by a couple degrees. So the choice is yours. So on to the score. I'm giving the value another 4 of 10. Okay, so the era is another era of ITX designs, but while testing it, we did not find the fractal we know. Also, we get an average score of 6 of 10. Cyber TikTok Silver Award. Pretty well deserved. You can still get away with this case if you are building a media PC, but gamers and creators, stay away from this one. Also, this is not mandatory, but 80% of you people do not subscribe. If you like the content, feel free to do so. It won't cost you any money. Now, if you're buying ITX products, check out this B560i board from MSI. Great board, to be honest.